Imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, your heart pounding as if it's trying to escape your chest. There's no nightmare, no intruder, no immediate threat, just an overwhelming, suffocating awareness. A thought has slithered its way into your mind and now it won't let go. You are at war with yourself. Not in the trivial way people say when they're torn between dessert and dieting. No, this is deeper, older, more primal. It's a silent, ceaseless conflict between who you are and who you can be, between the face you show the world with and the one that glares back at you in moments of brutal honesty. It's the war between the self you've constructed, the acceptable, socially rewarded version, and the shadow self, the one that whispers truths you're afraid to hear. This is the silent war inside every thinker. You feel it when you lie awake at 3 a.m., paralyzed by the weight of unasked questions. When you sit in a room full of people and suddenly realize none of them truly know you, not because you're hiding, but because you don't even know who you are. When you achieve something you thought would bring fulfillment, only to feel a hollow ache where satisfaction should be. Why? Because thinking real thinking, the kind that claws at the fabric of reality, isn't a passive act, it's a rebellion. It's defiance against the scripts handed to you at birth, the career paths, the moral codes, the definitions of success and sanity. Every time you question, every time you doubt, you're not just entertaining an idea, you're firing a shot in a war. Most people don't even realize they're fighting. But here's the paradox. The deeper you think, the more you suffer, and yet the more you suffer, the more you're compelled to think. Socrates drank hemlock for it, Nietzsche went mad for it, Van Gogh sliced off his ear for it, Dostoevsky's characters trembled on the edge of sanity for it. Why? Because once you've tasted the forbidden fruit of self-awareness, there's no going back to ignorance. You see the strings pulling everyone around you, and worse, you see the ones attached to your own limbs. So the question isn't whether you're at war. The question is, who's winning? Is it the part of you that craves comfort, that nods along with the crowd, that accepts half-truths because they're easier to swallow? Or is it the part that refuses to kneel, the part that would rather burn in the fire of truth than freeze in the lie of a borrowed life? And here's the most terrifying thought of all. What if you re-not the hero of this war? What if you're on the battlefield? The tension builds, the stakes rise. You can feel the weight of something vast and invisible pressing down on you, shaping your choices without your consent. But before you can retreat into distraction, before you can drown this awareness in noise, another question claws its way to the surface. What if the only way to end the war is to surrender to it? You are not imagining the war, it is not a metaphor, it is not an illusion. It is the inevitable consequence of being human, of possessing a mind that can observe itself, judge itself, and most dangerously, deceive itself. The silent war begins with a fracture split in consciousness that has haunted philosophers and psychologists for centuries. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Nietzsche called it the Dionysian chaos beneath Apollonian order. Sartre called it bad faith, the lies we tell ourselves to avoid the unbearable weight of freedom. But none of these definitions capture the raw, visceral experience of the conflict. To understand it, you must first confront its origins, the hidden mechanisms that turn self-awareness into a battleground. The birth of the divided self. From the moment you learned language, you were handed a mask. Society demanded it. Survival required it. You were taught to label your emotions, to categorize your instincts, to separate good from bad, acceptable from unacceptable. But in doing so, something vital was severed. The child who was scolded for crying too loudly learns to choke back tears. The teenager who was mocked for unconventional thoughts learns to parrot the opinions of the crowd. An adult who once burned with curiosity learns to nod along, to follow the script, to trade authenticity for approval. This is the first wound, the fragmentation of the self. The parts of you that were denied, repressed, or punished don't disappear. They go underground, they fester. They become the shadow, the exiled self that whispers in dreams, that erupts in irrational anger, that tugs at you with cravings you can't explain. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And so the war begins, not because you chose it, but because you were never given another option, the illusion of control. Here's where the trap tightens. You believe you are in control of your thoughts. You believe your decisions are rational, your beliefs are earned, your identity is solid. But this is the greatest lie the mind tells itself. Modern neuroscience reveals a staggering truth. Your conscious mind is not the commander of your brain, it's the narrator. Studies show that decisions are made in the subconscious seconds before you re-aware of choosing them. Your brain constructs stories to justify impulses that were never truly yours to begin with. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot what he wills. You are not the author of your life. You are the editor, scratching out lines, rearranging paragraphs, pretending the story was yours all along. The existential betrayal. And then comes the moment, the one that changes everything. You achieve what you were told to want, the career, the relationship, the accolades. And yet, instead of fulfillment, you feel nothing. Or worse, you feel cheated. This is the existential betrayal, the realization that the promises society sold you were illusions, that happiness was not waiting at the end of the ladder you've been climbing, that the person you've become is a stranger wearing your face. Dostoevsky's Underground Man screams it. I swear to you, gentlemen, that to be overly conscious is a sickness, a real thorough sickness. But it's not consciousness that's the sickness, it's the half-consciousness, the limbo between who you are and who you pretend to be. The agony of knowing just enough to suffer but not enough to break free. The cultural conspiracy. Society is not neutral in this war. It is an active participant, a force that rewards conformity and punishes deviation. From childhood, you were conditioned to seek external validation, grades, likes, promotions, the approving nods of strangers. The system doesn't want thinkers, it wants efficient workers, predictable consumers, obedient citizens. It thrives on your fragmentation, because a divided self is easier to control. Huxley's warning in Brave New World was prophetic. A really efficient totalitarian state would be one in which the all-powerful executive of political bosses and their army of managers control a population of slaves who do not have to be coerced because they love their servitude. You were never meant to wake up. You were never meant to question. Silence war is the price of disobedience, the turning point. Now the tension has reached its peak. You can feel the weight of all these invisible forces pressing down on you. The cultural conditioning, the neurological illusions, the exiled selves clamoring to be heard. But here's the crucial shift. The war is not your enemy. The war is your awakening. The friction you feel, the restlessness, the dissatisfaction, the sense that something is off is not a malfunction. It's a signal, a call to arms. The first stirrings of a self that refuses to die. Nietzsche's words ring like a bell in the dark. You must become who you are. But how? How do you fight an enemy you can't see? How do you reclaim a self you've never met? The answer lies in the most dangerous place of all the places you've been trained to avoid. You do not feel the chains because they are made of thought. The silent war is not some abstract philosophical dilemma. It bleeds into every decision, every relationship, every moment of your life. It distorts your reality while convincing you the distortion is truth. It is the reason you sabotage your own happiness, cling to relationships that suffocate you, and chase goals that leave you emptier than before. But the most dangerous consequences are the ones you never notice. The self you betrayed becomes your tormentor. Every time you silence an instinct to please others, every time you swallow your truth to keep the peace, a part of you goes into exile. But these exiled selves do not vanish. They gather in the shadows, growing louder, angrier, more desperate to be heard. This is why you experience unexplained rage at minor inconveniences, self-sabotage just as success is within reach, recurring dreams where you're being chased, falling or screaming without sound. Freud called this the return of the repressed. Jung saw it as the shadow's revenge. But you don't need theory to recognize it, you felt it. That sudden outburst over nothing, the wave of shame after pretending to be someone you're not, the haunting sense that you're living the wrong life. The punishment for self-betrayal is not guilt, it's disintegration. The manufactured hunger. Modern society runs on invented needs. You are conditioned to crave what you do not truly want. The promotion that will steal your soul, the possessions that will bury you in debt, the relationships that demand your surrender. This is not accidental. A fragmented self is a hungry self, and hunger is profitable. The more divided you are, the more you'll consume to fill the void. Huxley saw it coming. People will come to love their oppression, to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think. You scroll, you binge, you are numb. Not because you're weak, but because the war inside has exhausted you into submission. The illusion of choice. You believe you're free, you choose your career, your partner, your politics. But how many of these choices were truly yours? How many were imprinted by parents who loved you conditionally, education that rewarded compliance, algorithms that feed you curated realities? Studies show that people will defend choices they didn't to actually make. Their brains will even fabricate false memories to maintain the illusion of autonomy. Sartre's warning becomes visceral. We are our choices. But what if the choices were never yours to begin with? The Stockholm Syndrome of the soul. The most insidious consequence? You begin to love your prison. You mistake comfort for happiness. Call your limitations realism. Defend your chains as just the way things are. This is how good people become complicit in their own suffering. How vibrant minds settle for diluted lives. How societies slide into collective madness while everyone nods along. Dostoevsky's Grand Inquisitor whispers the terrible truth. So long as man remains free, he strives for nothing so incessantly as to find someone to worship. You've been taught to worship false gods, and the greatest of these is the false self you present to the world. The spiritual misdirection. Even your attempts at growth are often hijacked. The self-help industry sells quick fixes for wounds that require surgery. Spirituality becomes another performance Instagram enlightenment, packaged transcendence. You're told to manifest while the system rigs the game against you. Gabor Mate's insight cuts deep. Not all wounds are visible, but all invisible wounds fester. Your deepest hunger isn't for more, it's for realness. But reality is dangerous. Realness disrupts. Realness is revolutionary. The turning point. Now you see the battlefield clearly, the anxiety, the addictions, the unexplained voids. These aren't personal failures, they're symptoms of the war. But something is shifting. That restlessness? It's your buried vitality testing its chains. That sense of meaninglessness? It's your soul refusing to feast on lies. That loneliness in crowds? It's your authentic self signaling through the fog. The war was never your curse, it was your awakening. Now comes the most dangerous question. What happens when you stop fighting against yourself and start fighting for yourself? The moment when staying trapped becomes more painful than breaking free. You've seen the battlefield, the self-betrayals, the manufactured hungers, the invisible chains. Now comes the revolution, not against the world, but against the colonized territories of your own mind. This is not self-improvement. This is self-reclamation. The first act of war, radical honesty. You must become a traitor to the lies you've lived. Start with these questions. What have I been pretending not to know about myself? Where am I performing instead of existing? What would I stop doing today if I respected myself? Nietzsche's hammer strikes. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. This is solitary work. No witnesses, no applause. Just you in the dark, stripping away the false skins. Action. Keep a shadow journal, one no one will ever see. Write the ugly truths there first. Reclaiming your attention. The mind's great purge. Your attention is the battleground. Every notification, every headline, every must-watch is a skirmish for your consciousness. War inside cannot be won while you're occupied with someone else's war outside. Huxley's forgotten warning. The will to meaning can be suppressed, but never destroyed. Action. Go information fasting 1 day weekly with zero input. Practice thought-gazing, sit silently, and observe which thoughts are yours versus implanted. The shadow integration ritual. Jung's greatest insight, I'd rather be whole than good. Your flaws contain your suppressed power. Rage, harness it as boundaries. Laziness, it's your body demanding rest. Anxiety, it's your intuition screaming through the cracks. Action. Identify your most shameful trait. Ask, how could this serve me if wielded consciously? Design a ritual to reclaim it, e.g. the timid person roars in an empty forest. The anti-goal strategy. Society's formula is broken. Set goal. Achieve. Be happy. The rebel's path. Stop chasing what you think you want. Discover why you truly want it. Often, the real need requires no external validation. Schopenhauer's razor. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves to be like other people. Action? For every goal, ask, would I pursue this if no one would ever know I achieved it? The Daily Mutiny. Freedom is seized in micro moments. Say no when you mean no. Stay silent when others demand reaction. Wear what you truly like, not what earns approval. Dostoevsky's underground wisdom. To be too conscious is an illness, but to be conscious just enough is revolution. Action. Each morning declare one small act of rebellion before breakfast. The enemy's greatest weakness. They want you to be exhausted. The system feeds on drained attention, fragmented focus, constant reactivity. Your counterstrike. Deep presence. When fully present, manipulative narratives lose power, addictions lose their grip. Your authentic voice emerges. Sartre's challenge. Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you. Action. Set presence alarms, random moments when you stop and ask, am I here or in someone else's script? The turning of the tide. This is not about winning the war. It's about changing the war's nature. Each act of rebellion rewires the neural pathways of compliance. Every reclaimed truth weakens the dictatorship of the false self. You begin noticing the should lose their grip. Other rebels recognize you. Your pain now has meaning. Viktor Frankl's liberation. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. But the final revelation awaits the one that transforms suffering into sacred fire. The war was never inside you. That's the first lie they told you, that the conflict was yours alone to bear, that your restlessness was a flaw to medicate, your dissatisfaction a weakness to overcome, your depth a burden to carry. But here is the blinding, liberating truth. The war was always with the world. Your mind was never the enemy. The enemy was the ceaseless colonization of your consciousness, the way society pathologized your intensity as too much, framed your sensitivity as weakness, branded your nonconformity as arrogance. Nietzsche's hammer falls. The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. The anxiety, the depression, the sense of dislocation, these weren't signs of your brokenness. They were the fever symptoms of a soul fighting its inoculation, the grand illusion of separation. You thought you were battling yourself because they taught you to see your mind in compartments, rational versus emotional, conscious versus unconscious, light versus shadow. But the greatest thinkers knew better. Jung's final revelation. The paradox is that the more personal something is, the more universal it becomes. Your most private agonies, the fear of never being truly known, the terror of wasted potential, the hunger for something beyond material success. These aren't your personal failings, they're the birth pangs of human awakening, the alchemy of suffering. Here's what they never told you. Your pain wasn't meaningless. It was the friction necessary for your becoming. Every moment of existential dread, creative frustration, relational disillusionment was sand in the oyster of your consciousness, irritating you into pearl-making. Dostoevsky's prison wisdom. There is only one thing that I dread, not to be worthy of my sufferings. Your darkest nights weren't deviations from the path, they were the path. The death that precedes all real living. The final barrier isn't the fear of failure. It's fear of success, of what happens when you stop blaming your parents, outgrow your victim story, no longer have excuses. This is why people retreat at the threshold of freedom, because to be fully alive means taking radical responsibility for your existence. Sartre's unflinching truth. You are condemned to be free, but this condemnation is your salvation, the sacred return. Now comes the great homecoming, not to some idealized self, but to the raw, unfiltered isness of you. The child's wonder you buried under cynicism, the rebel's fire you dampened to fit in, the mystic's knowing you dismissed as unrealistic. Huxley's final whisper. It's dark because you are trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. This is the secret the silent war was trying to teach you all along, the ultimate realization. You weren't broken, you weren't failing, you weren't falling behind. You were waking up, and waking up hurts until it doesn't. War ends when you realize the contradictions aren't flaws, they're the hinges of your freedom. The questions aren't burdens, they're the keys. The loneliness wasn't abandonment, it was the universe clearing space for your truth. Now you stand at the precipice, not of understanding, but of surrender. Not surrender to defeat, but surrender to what always was. A self vast enough to contain all paradoxes. A mind flexible enough to hold opposing truths. A spirit ancient enough to know this dance by heart. The silent war was never your enemy. It was your initiation. And now, having stared into the abyss, having let it stare back, having become the bridge between all you were and all you could be, you realize the most shocking truth of all. War was love all along. Not the sentimental kind, not the easy kind, but the kind that burns away everything is false. The kind that forges souls in its furnace. The kind the poets try and fail to name. This is your birthright. This is your belonging. This is what the silent war was always trying to give you. Yourself. Uncensored, unapologetic, unfinished. And now, the real work begins. Thank you for watching.